Hello, everyone, and welcome to Raise the Vibe with Liz. I'm your host, Liz Peterson, and today I'm going to be interviewing the healing coach, Dr. Christi Diamond. For those of you who are not familiar with her, Dr. Christi Diamond is a naturopathic doctor, relationship expert, speaker, and author with over 15 years of experience guiding high achieving women and power couples through deep transformation. As the visionary behind Healing Acres, an exclusive retreat center, Christi specializes in helping driven leaders reclaim their feminine essence, heal relationship wounds, and unlock their full potential in love and life. With expertise in trauma healing, biohacking, and subconscious reprogramming, she has worked with thousands of women, also as team with her husband, has worked with couples, and integrating cutting edge science with soul level healing. The Diamond Difference signature methods combine neuroscience, holistic wellness, and relationship mastery, positioning her as a sought after mentor for those ready to experience radical shifts in their marriage, health, and personal power. Christi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for reaching out to be on the podcast. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Let's jump into what led you to doing this work, Christi.
Oh gosh. How long do we have now? Um, actually, it's funny because I really do think that your mess becomes your message. I know it's kind of cliche, but it's really true. And I would say that so much of my work is almost like reaching back to Christy years ago and just being like, listen up, sister, I gotcha. And this is the path to get here. I feel like I took a really long path and, or I'm sorry, I took a path that took a long time. Let's say it that way to
Sure.
get here. And a lot of those things were necessary, but if I could help somebody literally know the shortcuts that I wanted when I went through kind of my dark night of the soul, I would be all in for it. Because when you can really understand where to go and how to do it and understand yourself even quicker, like what then is possible. So I would say that I went through a lot of the things to get to this place, and one of those was I went through some pretty significant trauma, and then I experienced a very painful divorce, and walked through single motherhood for about 8.5 years before I met my guy, my person, the love of my life, Rick, and then we had our own journey. Like I remember having a therapist at the time I was going through the divorce, and she was like, you're not going to resolve some of these things until you're actually in a relationship again or like in marriage again. And when I met Rick, I was like, I did it. Like I'm ready. I'm good. I did all the things. And then we got into a relationship and I was like, oh, that's what she was talking about. And so, we're wounded in relationship and we heal in relationship. Is what Dr. Hendricks says. And I just love that quote so much because it truly is so much about healing and relationship. So yeah, I would say all the things kind of created my journey, and the culmination of all that together brought me to this place.
I love that expression. You are wounded in relationship and you heal in relationship. Let's zero in on that right there because speak to the dynamics that you were experiencing in your past relationship and what you did with your therapist first. And then I want to segue into what happened when you got into relationship.
So the dynamics, I actually married my high school sweetheart, and we grew up together, but we didn't really grow in the ways I think we needed to together. He had some mental uh, illness, and it was really difficult to be in relationship with him when he hadn't resolved a lot of his stuff and I hadn't resolved a lot of my stuff. He grew up in an abusive home and then became an abuser in our home. And I didn't have that growing up in my life. My dad was just like so respectful to my mom. It was just like it was just I don't know. It was kind of like the frog in the water, like it heats up and it doesn't know. And anyway, we ended up having three incredible boys. And the marriage ended with infidelity. And at the time, I literally thought my life was over. Like, I remember just being like, and I actually went into clinical depression. So much so that I remember being in my closet, having three young boys, and literally asking God, please just take me now. Like, I can't do this. I can't do one more thing. I had nothing left in me. I had no strength. I kind of just collapsed in a puddle on the floor. And literally in that moment, I felt arms like just come around me and hold me. And I just bawled and I fell asleep. And I'll say nothing was different in life. Like something hadn't magically changed with a magic wand, but I literally had a peace that I couldn't describe. And I knew that there was a power greater than mine that like just had me through it. And so I walked through it, went to a therapist, for a little bit, and just really recognized how much I had let go of me, just literally self-sabotage, um, self-preservation, had gone into kind of survival patterns, and also self-betrayal, a lot of self-betrayal, trying to people please and make him happy and, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, years later, marrying Rick and going into relationship, I did not trust men. Like my trust in men was so shattered because I had just utterly trusted, right? It was so shattered that I just um there wasn't, it's like I loved him, but he didn't feel like there was room in my life for him. Like I remember I had become so efficient and self-sufficient with me and the three boys that he was kind of like, I remember a few weeks into our marriage, he was like, so what did you need me for? And I was like, oh my gosh. Like he just didn't know where he belonged. I had gone so deeply into the masculine energy, make it happen, get it done. Like I knew our routine, I knew what was, happening. And there wasn't really room for him to just come into that place of masculine. And I had trauma I hadn't really resolved within me. And it came out in our disagreements where I would freeze. I literally would just stop talking. I didn't know what to say or what to do. And here was a man who actually wanted to hear what I had to say, but I didn't even know how to say it or how to express my needs. And so we went through probably in 3 years, we actually considered divorce ourselves and decided to dig in really, really deep and figure out what, the patterns were. And what we decided was your spouse can become the trigger that keeps triggering you into your trauma, or they can become your healing agent. Now, that doesn't mean that they're responsible for your healing. It means that they can truly become a healing agent. And we do tend to marry our unfinished business. So understanding each other and communicating and doing things differently helped us to understand what was happening within us that we had to kind of regulate. And I would honestly say that all divorces come from survival patterns. Absolutely, 100%. We go into our survival patterns. And so we were doing that. We were going into our survival patterns and combating each other. And then we just came to this place after attending marriage boot camp and recognizing some things about ourselves. We then actually started working with marriage boot camp and worked with them for 6 years on stage, helping facilitate couples and marriages and individuals, walking through things that then we created what came to be Healing Acres and our retreat center here. And literally, it's just like having walked the journey and all the study, and then even the study of naturopathic doctor and the biology of men and women, which actually is really essential to understand in relationship. Just came to this place of really knowing what it takes for there to kind of be that infinity kind of flow energy in relationship with each other.
Mm, beautiful. Thank you for that explanation, Christy.
Yeah.
Oh, so many. Okay, I jotted down some notes for myself because I want to go back and pinpoint each one of these. So in the
See,
beginning, you were sitting in the closet and you had the realization that there was a power greater than you assisting you in that moment.
mhm.
And when I look back, I too had that realization. And I think that's really important to come to that. It's not just me. I'm not alone. There is a higher power that's with me, and supporting me through this difficulty that I'm going through. Talk to that and your spiritual connection and how that showed up for you.
I call my higher power God, and like, I just coming to the understanding of I can't understand who I am until I know whose I am or where I come from was essential for me to really understand, like, we truly are human beings having a spiritual experience, and when I'm connected into that higher power, I'm connected more so to myself than ever because there's an identity with it. And I just leaning on that and understanding that this I kind of call this experience Earth School, that I'm here to learn and grow and experience and not be perfect and not get it all right. I mean, it's going to be messy, but knowing that there's a higher power that knows me truly and knows who I am, I can go back to I my belief is that I kind of signed up for some things here. and and God knows that for me, and I get to go back to the remembering of that when I am in conversation. And so daily conversation with my higher power is essential to who I am and what I do. And I call I guess our fullest potential kind of our divine nature, this divine in us and the potential we have to reach this divine nature within us. And what I have found as a naturopathic doctor in relation to this higher power and who we become is that we were designed biologically, and when we honor our biological nature, we then understand what our divine nature can be and who we can become. And until we honor that, we can't fully become that extent, if that makes sense, of our fullest potential. So that has everything to do with everything, I think. And it has grounded me into who I am over and over and over again. And so I just can't imagine doing life without that.
Beautiful. Can you unwrap a little bit more about that? How'd you say biologic nature? Because I think
Yes.
that dips in also on how we relate.
Yes, totally. Okay, so this is the stuff I geek out on. Um, I Okay, so my husband and I have Healing Acres here, and we have couples come for VIP intensives, and we're like digging through all layers of their relationship for 3 or 4 days and just kind of, you know, and things were awesome. Like doing that was awesome and helping them. And then when I finished school as a naturopathic doctor and in the study of the biological nature, so it was like this puzzle piece that fit in that was just like, oh my gosh, like, why aren't more people talking about this? And it was understanding the biological nature of men and women. And in our biology, like, I'm going to talk masculine, feminine when it comes to biological nature. So let's remember it's biological nature I'm talking about. So biologically, women um, are born. with a value because they can have children. And men almost have to prove their value. Again, we're going back to biological because they can't have children, right? But we've got to carry on the, like humanity, right? And so so there's a lot of value when we're born in our nature of feminine and masculine. And when I knew the dynamics and I studied those, and we honor those, it's unbelievable what happens in relationships. So men, for one, are territorial in their biological nature. They have territory, and in their territory they protect it, like fiercely protect and provide for their territory. And women are, more the nurturers, and men are hunters. And so just even basically looking at some of those things, like if men are hunters, then what's really valuable to them are their eyes and ears, right? Like that makes them a hunter, right? Like just being able to see what the danger is, and their ears. And so communication with them, when we understand communication is so different from how a woman communicates. So men need to know, like, looking at your facial expression is huge for a man. And they're looking for, is she happy or sad? Or I'm sorry, happy or unhappy. Basically, those are the two categories the men are in. Like, is she happy? If she's happy, awesome. If she's not, how can I make her happy? Kind of this problem solving they go into. And then, so in communication, if we're texting our men all the time, it's actually not the best form of communication, but letting them see our facial expression and then hearing the intonation, just because, again, biological nature, right? So if you know just that alone, that shifts communication drastically when you're talking to a man, and your facial expressions, if you're, showing happiness or unhappiness. Anyway, all of this goes into, um, when we talk about biological nature and the gender we're born into, a young girl needs to know biologically that there's a masculine energy that protects and provides for her. And if she doesn't, she will go into that herself. She will
Mm.
go into protector provider herself. And at a young age, between ages 8 and 11, and sometimes even younger, most women in the Western world actually lose what I call their serenity, their feminine essence, because something does happen that takes her away from her biological nature of the flow and freedom of the feminine energy and the softness of it and the curiosity and discovery of it. And she'll go into the masculine nature to protect and provide for herself. And then that determines how she does relationship from then on. And it's absolutely crazy when you recognize that. And so what I help women do is to actually pinpoint when they quote unquote lost or released or let go of their feminine nature, because it has everything to do with how they do relationship, right? And so when we can bring that back, when we bring back the biological nature, it also comes with, what comes with that is our path to our divine nature. If we're out of alignment with who we were born to be, we can never reach that without knowing it fully. Does that make sense? And
Yes.
so that's what I work with women, and the realizations are just these huge aha moments. And so I created this experience called Healing Your Serenity, and women will do it and literally feel, because it also takes out, it affects hormones too. Okay. In the brain, the right side is masculine, the left side is feminine. And when we have to go to the masculine side of the brain, our testosterone levels actually shoot up. And we start to have a difference in our hormones just because we go into that biological nature of self-preservation and protection, interestingly enough. So that affects women. And so here we have women who are struggling with having children, conceiving, right? And then we've got men who have low testosterone who've also been hit to where they go to to the other side of the brain and estrogen levels go up. It's just crazy when you start looking at it, how so much can actually be explained biologically.
Wow.
So in relationship, that will bounce back and forth. And there's only room for one to hold masculine energy at a time. So if we show up in masculine, how can he then show up in masculine? And so we go into these dynamics and we're just like, I just wish he would blank, right? But we're holding that space instead, so he won't, and that will make a difference. And so, interestingly enough, I'll tell you this, what we find in our study of working with so many couples is that something happens. So, usually when we're courting, we're actually in the feminine masculine dynamics biologically, but something happens in the first 5 years of marriage that starts to undo that and kind of flip flop it. And we can literally, people will pinpoint, we'll go with couples and they will pinpoint, they'll be like, I know what took us off track. And it's something actually in the first 5 years that took them off track, that 15 years later, an affair happens or, something. And we literally backtrack it all the way back to the first 5 years of marriage. It's really crazy, but it has so much to do with our biological nature.
Wow, that's so fascinating. And there's so much conversation around women being in the masculine, especially from the 80s when they felt like they had to in the workplace or the man wasn't around. So the woman had to take a more masculine role in the household. And
Yes.
then navigating, like, when am I in my divine masculine or masculine self to be able to get things done? And then when can I surrender and go back into that feminine essence? You also speak to, that being wrapped up in our authenticity, or as you said, like your serenity. So I want you to go more into like what or how you see serenity as being connected to our feminine essence or
Mm.
like that loss of our true nature.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in our feminine essence and our biological nature as a woman, it is, I mean, one of the beautiful gifts is our intuition. And and just kind of that knowing. And when we go away from that, we go into second guessing, we go into self-betrayal, we go into people pleasing, we put on the costume of what we learned, we had to wear in order to be loved, etc. And so we start outsourcing our inner authority when we let go of that. And if we aren't honoring our inner authority, then we can't honor our nature of who we are and our path. And so when I say the serenity, it's almost like coming back to yourself. It's not even like this evolution of I'm going to go find it. It's literally like it was in us when we were born, and it's bringing it back to ourselves, and it's a remembering. And so I've had women who in fact, so I'll use an example of one of the women who took the Serenity course. Beforehand, she'd had some childhood trauma with male figures in her life, and throughout her marriage, she had kind of shut down her voice, not spoken up. She took the Serenity course, and it literally changes you. Like you feel different. You literally feel different. And she said, I've just started speaking up, like almost like there's no fear of speaking up anymore. And it's not this confrontational, like I'm just going to tell it like it is, but it's literally this like voice that rose inside of her that she had shut down. And she started to notice how different she was. And she was able to kind of lean into the softer side, which is not weaker. I actually think the feminine essence is so freaking powerful, and that women actually set the tone in relationship. And if we understood the power we actually have in relationship, we would be doing relationship so differently if because we understand it. We understand how we set the tone, and we understand what then changes the trajectory of our relationships. And so bringing that back and being strong in your intuition, it's like when you know what your answers are, then you also know what the possibilities are. And if you don't know what your answers are, you will sit in confusion and wonder what the possibilities are. You'll sit on the fence wondering if anything's possible, where in your intuition and your knowing, you'll know that anything is possible. And so it just opens up a whole new world to like, who am I and what am I here for? And what am I bringing, to the world? And we need it so badly right now. We truly, truly need it so badly. And I'll tell you this, it opens up the magic in your relationship when you honor it. To the place of when I finally walked back to myself and who she is, I was like, oh my gosh, I robbed myself of this for this long. Are you kidding me? And it's just like relationship becomes so like you have blissful moments. They're not just little glimpses. Like you literally like there's this beautiful flow between the masculine feminine energy that is just like I call it just like the sweet nectar of life. And it's rich and it's powerful and it's deep and it's just all the things. So when you're honoring that, it then kind of triggers him to honor his masculine, and he just naturally starts to flow into that. And it's just like such a beautiful thing to watch in relationship.
Mm, beautiful, Christy. I want to circle back to what you said earlier. Know what your answers are, because I
Yes.
think that's important too, because a lot of women don't know what their answers are. Can you dive into that a little bit deeper for us?
Yes. When we have had traumas in our life, that's truly what I specialize in is trauma. Like it literally alters how we do life because we look at life through a different lens, right? And if we're looking at life through a different lens and not clearly seeing who we are because we look through trauma eyes or understanding who we are or knowing that we have our answers, it's kind of like having amnesia and living life in this kind of altered state as opposed to true to yourself and to who you are. And there's just a difference in part of it is also just being present to life and who you are and what you're here to do. And when you understand that, you are magnetic. It's actually the feminine essence is so magnetic. It's like you attract all that's meant for you is just on the path for you because you're the magnet that, kind of brings it along. But if the magnet is maybe turned backwards and you are then attracting things that actually aren't really truly meant for you or relationships that don't serve you well or even working at a job that's just not your brilliance, we go to the place of good enough and we go to the place of settling and we go to the place of just being okay with the mundane. And to me, that's just not a life that's truly like lived. Like it's like dying with the music in you. And I'll tell you, this is where it just gets me and I get emotional and I'm okay with my emotions. But I have seen so many people literally die to who they are and become who they weren't meant to be. And it feels so inauthentic to them that, trauma has altered them in a sense that it becomes their identity and it's a false identity. And through that false identity, they make choices that don't serve them well. And it's just like I think the biggest tragedy is to not live the life meant for you, is to not live the life where the potential of who you are is out there. I've done business coaching with a lot of women, and one of the things I'll say to them is you can be good at so many things. Like we can be so good at so many things. But when you live in your brilliance and you honor who you are and you know who you are, that brilliance, it's kind of like having like a diamond. Yeah, I love my last name. And you look at one of the facets of it, right? And you're just living life just looking at that one facet. But when the light hits the diamond and you see the brilliance, it just shines like for the whole world to see. And can you imagine a world where we were all living in our brilliance? Like, what would that be like? You know, it's just, and it's actually true freedom, which is what everyone is seeking. Freedom is actually in the brilliance of who we are and the magnificence of it. And it's the magnet to everything that was meant for us. So if you're not living in that space, you're not fully receiving everything meant for you. And the biggest part of feminine essence is actually learning how to receive well. And if we're not receiving well, then we're not doing life well. And what I saw, I had this, I'm very much a visionary, and God speaks to me in pictures and visions and things. And when I saw the picture of serenity, it was like two strands of light. And at the bottom was the womb of the woman, and at the top was, was kind of like her crown chakra, her, going out into the world. And it was like when her serenity was cut off, it cut her off from three things. It cut her off from trusting herself. It cut her off from trusting men, which is essential to relationship. And then it also cut her off from fully receiving from God. So to have that back, she gets to understand who she is. She trusts men, so she can go into a relationship with men, with a man who's actually truly meant for her that she can fully trust. And she learns how to fully receive from God. Like that's life right there, like all three of those channels are open, and you're golden, But to see that the difference in a woman before and after of giving that back to herself, it's just like she's literally living life. And in the mundane, that will feel like the extraordinary life. Like, oh, well, I'm not looking for extraordinary. Well, you are extraordinary. You were meant for extraordinary. So, of course, the extraordinary life is the only level to live at, you know?
Mm, yes. Yeah, let's do extraordinary. And to get to extraordinary, like you were saying, you have to go through the healing process. I think that's that middle space where we're going through, what we used to do, what our patterns and programmings were, the healing space, and then getting to that extraordinary space where we are magnetizing, all the beautiful things into our life. I want to kind of dip into that middle space though, because I think that's an important place to be in, especially for a lot of people on the healing process and go through like
Uh-huh.
I know like post my um marriage or post my divorce, there was a rewiring of my brain, so to speak. Yeah, there was a definite rewiring of my brain. And being in relationship actually helped me do that, to show up and be in these different circumstances that proved to my mind that it wasn't going to get what it was expecting, that it was actually receiving something different, and being able to,
Yeah.
my nervous system to be able to relax and welcome in the new way of doing something. But I want to, because you specialize in trauma, I want you to talk about that rewiring that we have to go through. And I definitely would not have gotten that had I not been in my relationships post divorce.
Absolutely. It is a rewiring because our brain tends to go to the survival mode, the survival patterns. And when you experience something new, it shifts it to the point where if your brain's going to go back to the proof of the history of like, remember this, like you're in danger, so don't do this because, this, and you have a different experience. It's a positive experience, in contrast to the negative. You can redirect the brain back to the positive and be like, yeah, and here is the proof, right? And so it's like we have the power to redirect our brain and to tell it, what information to start looking at, as opposed to just letting it just take over in the primal of like, oh, you can't be in a relationship again. It's dangerous. Men are dangerous. You can't trust. You can't, when you experience these things, and part of the work we do when we do our intensives here, so we do couples intensives, and then I do women's retreats, and Rick does men's retreats. we're literally going back to the place where the domino started, right? Like that one domino that started the trajectory, which is usually a traumatic experience. And we go back into the subconscious mind and we give it a different experience through experiential healing. And it's kind of like the emotional intelligence grows up in someone. Like you go back to that place where you keep being stuck, where it's just like, this is where I keep landing. Like, what's happening? Why did, I keep landing here? And so we go back there and we reframe it and we work with the subconscious to where it's like the little child grows up and the emotional intelligence grows to a higher level. And at that higher level, you're going to make different choices in the future, right? And so there's this reframing that happens in this healing and kind of this completion. Because when there's that wound, you'll keep looking, there's like this gaping hole, and you keep filling it with things that just aren't working, right? They're just not working over and over. Different relationships or experiences. And when that hole or that void is filled, it no longer is the wound that needs all the attention. And it shifts and changes how you do life and how you do relationship. And I'll tell you, like, even in my relationship with Rick, um, believing in a higher power and knowing that there is the capacity to heal at all levels. At the same time, I'll say that Rick has been truly the biggest healing agent in my life. Like, to experience a man who would never, and a man in his true masculine would never, ever harm a woman. I'll tell you that. Biologically, a man in his masculine would never even think to harm a woman. And
Mhm.
so to experience that differently, because here was a wounded man in my past relationship who was emasculated, and in their emasculation, they actually go to toxic feminine, not toxic masculine, as we say, because toxic feminine is very emotionally charged because, it's the emotions, right?
Mhm.
So in his rage and in his toxic feminine, he kept wounding me. And to go to a man who is strong and is masculine and has no desire to harm me, I got to experience life differently in relationship with a man. And how, I remember Rick saying, to actually getting tears in his eyes and saying, I am so sad to ever think someone harmed you in that way. And even those words were so healing for me. I'm just like, oh, like it was just like he had such a reverence for me. And men in their true masculine nature revere the feminine. They don't revere a woman, because a woman can also be very toxic and cruel and they revere the feminine. And so as he would show up in his masculine, I felt the safety because he held that space that I could go then to my feminine and my softness, and we could just, you know, again go into that kind of flow energy. But if you don't do the healing, you will continue the patterns and you will continue to attract the same kinds of relationships. As I've worked with women, because I teach them how to be in relationship with men through biological nature. As and I have a lot of women who are single who come to me, and then they'll start to use these principles with men, and they're like, I am dating a totally different guy now. Like, I'm attracting a totally different guy. One of the ladies, she's like, I feel like I'm on The Bachelorette. I cannot believe. Like, it's so funny. She had this experience where she was dating, guys that just weren't available for a long time, right? She started dating different guys. One day she posts on Facebook, oh my gosh, I would love some, I don't know, crumble cookies. That's what it was. I would love crumble cookies, but I don't have that. So I'm just going to settle for these carrot sticks. She's talking about a snack. Literally 30 minutes later, crumble cookies arrive at her door. And it's from one of the guys
Wow.
she's been dating, like, and literally men are saying to her, I have never felt so masculine in a relationship. They're using words like that, or they're saying, I've never had a woman just lean so much into her feminine. It's so refreshing. Like, they want it. They crave us in our feminine. And in order for us to be in our feminine, we've got to heal the ways in which we keep taking ourselves to the masculine, because we think it's the power, the get her done, make it happen, which is awesome in business. Like, we need our masculine energy in business. But in relationship, we cannot hold the same energy in relationship. And so I attract a lot of powerhouse women who are just like killing it in business and doing well. And they're like, "Ah, but my husband isn't, showing up this way." And I'm like, it's because you are, honey. You're showing up that way. And there's got to be room for him to be in his masculine. So
Yes, I love how you're speaking to the way or the blocks that stand in the way of us repeating the old patterns.
yes,
Kind of stepping into
absolutely.
kind of
Yeah.
like authentically ourselves. For those women out there who are
Yeah.
like, okay, how can I do this? How can I step fully into my divine feminine? How can I step into this authenticity within myself?
Well, part of our serenity is going back to, I mean, our childlike wonder as a little girl, like just our curiosity, right? And the softness and the giggling and serenity is all those things. It's that whole looking at life through new eyes, right? It's leaning in the curiosity. It's what do we love to do? What lights us up? It's the things that light us up. It's the all the things that feel true to our nature are part of our feminine. It just is. And I love being a woman. I love it so much. And I mean, like even like this, okay? I have like I'm this rebel. If I have to wear glasses, they better be dang cute, okay?
They're
And so
amazing
so
glasses.
they've got the rhinestones on it. That's the little girl in me that's like I'm going to sparkle and shine and unapologetically, right? So it's like, how do you bring the fun back into yourself? What did you love to do as a little girl? And even leaning into it's funny, one of the things we do in one of the courses, it's called the Power View with Him, is I have them as a homework assignment. Some of the women like who are married, I'll say, I want you to have your husband go to your closet and tell you which clothes he feels like are feminine and which ones aren't. And it's so funny because I had my husband do this and he was like, okay, this is not, and this is not, and this is not. But it's so comfortable. And I was like, oh, and he was like, I like this. They love men are attracted to the feminine. So the softness, the ruffles, the softer fabric, the flowy, like all of that, all those words, right? Flowy and soft are all feminine. And men can't really attain that. Like it's something that's why they're magnetized to it. The softness, the curves, because it's like something that's not in them and they want it and so they're magnetized to it. So it's when you speak, do it in a non-critical way. Like, okay, right now we're coaching some couples, and one of the things we're talking about is being flirtatious as in the feminine. And so instead of saying one of the ladies, I said to her, instead of saying, gosh, I wish you would just plan a date sometime, like, why don't you plan the date instead of me planning it? It could be something fun like, oh, I dare you to plan the funnest date ever and see what you come up with. Okay, to him, that's play. Like that's gonna, he opens up and he's like, "Oh, let's play. And it's a challenge." And problem solving is masculine energy. So he goes into the problem solving. Now, when he does it, you don't then go to critical and say, "Oh, well, I wish you would have done this instead," right? Because that's going to shut him down. And so what we tell couples is three things that shut a man down is when you criticize, coach, and close yourself off from him. And the women, what shuts her down is feeling unseen, unheard, and unsafe, either emotionally or maybe even sometimes physically. You can feel unsafe. And so if you can stay away from those three things, coaching him. Now Rick and I have this dynamic. I mean, we're both coaches, right? We're both relationship experts and coaches. I can't coach my husband. That is like total turn off, right? Like as much as I might want to, I cannot coach him, right? And criticizing just shuts a man down. Now I know criticism shuts everybody down, but there's something about criticism that it's just cuts them to their core. So if you look at the opposites of that for women, so instead of coaching, could you compliment? Instead of criticizing, could you um let him know what you appreciate? Right? Instead of closing yourself off, can you open your heart to him? So that's just kind of the segue into it. And a man that is magnetized by the feminine, there's nothing he won't do. Like he's actually willing to sacrifice to make her happy because happiness matters to him. Making her happy matters to him. And I'll teach women how to talk to men and they'll be like, "Well, that sounds manipulative." And I'll say, "And what you've been doing isn't?" Because we do. We can be manipulative in how and our passive aggressive and our instead of just flat out saying what we want, kind of trying to walk around the issue or whatever. But it makes a difference in knowing how they're wired and understanding them and saying things like, I'd love it if you planned a date this weekend for us," instead of like, again, the critical, right? So there's ways we can communicate that really lights them up. And in relationship, I have a key that unlocks something great in Rick, and Rick has a key that unlocks something great in me. And working together, you can unlock that together, and magic really does happen. And it's amazing.
I love how you pointed out how we can unlock each other because I think we lose sight of that sometimes, or time goes on and you kind of forget these things. So it's nice, for our listeners out there to kind of get that reminder, even myself to get that
Yeah.
reminder of like how to show up, and even for the solo
Yeah.
person who's out there dating like myself, how to show up in my authentic self. And, I love how you pointed out that fun, loving, laughter, teasing thing, because that's a huge part of me. And I know as soon as that starts going offline or I stop laughing as much as I used to, I'm looking at like, okay, I'm settling
Yeah.
right now. So, it's time for me to move on and kind of pull in, something else that would be more in alignment with what I need in my life so I can show up in a way, that kind of honors who I am in my life. You spoke a little bit to identity too, and I think a lot of us can get stuck in these identifiers that we have for ourselves, and they can also be a block.
Yes. Yeah. Well, when you talk about identities, like if I say, um, I'm divorced, right? There's a whole different energy than I experienced the disillusion of a marriage. Like, I mean, just even saying that, you feel a whole difference in the frequency and the energy, right? Or even I'm a widow as opposed to I've experienced the death of a spouse. It's when we go to the place of I am this, there's a whole energy that comes to it. And even people around us, when they hear it, it's just like we put this identity with it and all these labels and oh, that means this and oh, that means that. But when I say I've experienced the death of a spouse, there's still like this sadness and this compassion, but it's like an experience, right? That I walked through. I walked through this experience and it's not my identity. But when we go to the place of I'm this or I'm that, or even like I'm single, as opposed to I'm enjoying life solo right now, is a totally different experience, a
Oh, I
totally
love that.
different, frequency to it. And so it's just like so what's so fun about doing life solo? Like, there's a lot of fun to that too. Just as a lot like there's a lot of fun to be in in a couple. And so when we can go to these are my experiences and not my identities, then there's a flow and a freedom in it that we can, it's kind of like we're in the exploration of it because I was also, I was living solo as a mom of three boys for a while. And there was things I loved about that. Like we ate, breakfast for dinner and I didn't have to, I mean, there's just things that you can explore and have fun with instead of like, this is my identity and ooh, these are all the bad things that come with it. So we get to choose what energy we choose to live in by how we choose to identify about life and our experiences. And it makes all the difference, right? And every day it's a choice of choosing into that or not.
Oh, I love that. Live from the experience, and not the attachment to the
Yeah,
identifier. I like that a lot. It kind of leans into that, where we put our focus, like where the attention goes, energy flows, right? So
absolutely.
what do we want
Yeah.
to bring into our life? And, if we find an experience that brings us joy, have more of that experience. And I like how you renamed it. Definitely going to incorporate that into my life. Thank you, Dr. Christie.
Yeah.
So I always ask my guests
Mhm.
a question at the end of our interview, and I can't believe we're coming to the end of our hour already. It's been such a fantastic interview. Thank you so much, Christy, for joining me. I always ask, what is a jewel of wisdom that you would like to leave our listeners with today?
Mm, jewel of wisdom. Gosh, I'm trying to think. There's like several I could think of, but for now, I think I want the one I want to land on is um if if you are choosing to live the extraordinary, what's the extra you can bring above the ordinary? Because, that is the extraordinary. So it's just like today could just be a regular day, or you could add the extra by doing something that just lights up your soul. And if you have every day where you light up your soul, you literally shift your energy and change how you're doing life, and you are living the extraordinary. And so every day I look for something to live in or experience or create that is the extra. That's the like this, like my glasses again. Like I I love these glasses. There's just little things that kind of ground me into the extraordinary of life, right? I have actually some tennis shoes that are all rhinestones and they sparkle and light up. And so there's things that light me up. So if you can find something every day that lights you up, you are living the extra in the ordinary and all the things that light you up. And as you do that, you become the magnet. You honor the truth of who you are. And it's actually infectious. People around you will just, like in fact, yesterday it was so funny. I was wearing these and a lady's like, "Oh, that's so funny. I took those off before I took my glasses off before I came into the building and put my regular ones on because I was like, I can't wear those." And she's like, and I look at you and I'm like, I can wear those. And it's just like one little thing like that, and she's like, I'm wearing those every day now, like, kind of thing. So it's just like, what if you want to live the extraordinary, then give yourself permission to have a little extra every day, whatever that is. It doesn't have to cost money. It doesn't, and live in that and let that become your norm and let the ordinary become the glimpses of life. Like, oh, yeah, sometimes I have some normal moments, but really I live in the extraordinary all the time. Um, because you get to choose it. And when you choose it, then the extraordinary shows up. The extraordinary relationship shows up. The extraordinary job, the extraordinary, like you become the magnet again, where the energy flows. What you focus on is where the energy flows to. And so I would just say that. I would just say, really, truly give yourself permission to live the extraordinary by giving yourself that every day. Don't wait for it. Don't push for it. Don't live in expectation that somebody else is going to give it to you. Give it to yourself and honor yourself in that because you are so extraordinary. If one of the gifts I have is so I can't explain it, but I can like see inside people's body. I can read energy, all the things. And one gift I have is I can see people without all their lies. And if we literally knew who was in our company and how extraordinary each one of us was. Like we would just be in awe every single day, number one of ourselves, but of each other. And so it's just like just live the extraordinary. Like give it to yourself. Like why what are you waiting for? Do it now.
I love that, Chrissy. How beautiful and how extraordinary a gift that you can see everybody's brilliant light inside. And, I hope for everybody, all of our listeners out there, that they see their beautiful lights inside too and take each day to do something extraordinary. I really like that, Jewel of Wisdom. Thank you so much for sharing that. And also, how can people reach
Yeah.
you? If they want to work with you, check out what you've got going on, how do they find you?
Yeah. Yeah, so we have a website called thehealingcoach.com. Pretty easy to remember. Thehealingcoach.com. And so you can find out information on how to contact us there. We have like a complimentary discovery call form people can fill out if they want to reach out and look at, working with us. But yeah, thehealingcoach.com is the easiest way to reach us.
Fantastic. Okay, everybody, thehealingcoach.com. Reach out and find Dr. Christy and see, how she can impact her life and, allow you to live an extraordinary life. Dr. Christy, thank you so much for joining me on Raise the Vibe with Liz. It's been such a pleasure to host you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
Bye.
thank you everyone for joining us. Again, I'm Liz Peterson and this is Raise the Vibe. And you can find me on social media and my website, raisethevibewithliz.com. Thank you everybody. And remember to get out there and raise the vibe. Have a great day, everyone.